Hi everyone. My name's Bradley. I'm a strategic account manager working for Sinch. Been working there for 6 years now within the UK and Ireland account team, but I now mostly look after our regionally strategic banking customers within the EMEA region.
Yeah, and hi, I'm Dave Boddington, so I work at Infobip. Full disclosure, I'm responsible for product and technical operations for RCS, but in a previous role, I've worked across all our digital channels.
So could be a biased conversation.
Yeah, I can see Sue here. I think she's here as Claudine's proxy, so to make sure I don't mention the green one.
Well, more importantly, I don't know if I should sit in between you two guys. I've got Infobip and Sinch together on the stage here, but I'm sure we're all friends, right? So Dave, let me come to you first. Can you just tell us about those competing channels a little bit more? They're obviously entering the market, as we've heard a little bit about today. But can you just tell us a bit more about what's there?
Yeah, it's quite a broad and complex ecosystem. You know, I guess the complete OTT ecosystem, because there's a number of different players, and each has a different kind of regional focus, a different set of capabilities, and to a certain extent also a different audience as well. And I think it was mentioned earlier around kind of, you know, we at Infobip, we have a full suite of channels in our stack, so we very much want to be making sure we're focusing on providing what's right for our customers, and obviously what's right for our customers' customers, and also what's right for their consumers. But if you look at I guess from top down, you know, the largest and most obvious OTT and the competitor to the telco channels would be WhatsApp. They have pretty global reach, significant user base, 2 billion or so, and a really kind of rich feature set. And they've gained a significant amount of traction, certainly in certain markets, we know as well, and maybe we'll touch on that in a little bit. Kind of once you step down from those, there's probably more kind of regionality in terms of the focus. Viber is a strong player, certainly in the CIS and the CEE region. Particularly, they again also have a strong feature set and a couple of flavours, whether it be for direct A2P messaging or user-initiated chats. Then you start to kind of step into more of the regional players. Line, which is working across much of Southeast Asia. Kakao, which is very Korean focused. Zalo, which is very Vietnam focused, and then some of the kind of maybe more niche, such as Telegram, for example. So there's an awful lot of kind of options for brands to look at, and it's very much going to be driven by what consumers want. You also then need to look at those user-initiated channels. I mentioned Viber bots already, but obviously Apple Messaging for Business. Google used to have their GBM product, which I guess is kind of rolling into RCS in many ways. And you can look at Instagram messaging, Facebook Messenger, and the like. So you know, there's other channels there that are maybe less directly competitive to telco channels such as SMS and RCS, but they are serving the purpose of enabling consumers and brands to interact. So in the kind of medium longer term, they do become at least direct considerations.
Is that, Bradley, just come to you, is it similar that you're seeing at Sinch? Similar countries, similar OTT channels, anything?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was a very detailed overview. There's not a lot I can add to that. I think probably the two challenges I see as being potentially the most dangerous from my perspective are mobile push, which I think we're probably losing quite a lot of traffic to within particular industry verticals. I'm thinking primarily of app-driven verticals like banking or the food service industry. I see them proactively trying to move to push, right, because it's cheaper and it's often seen as being more secure, particularly in the banking industry. The other, of course, is the OTT channels, which have easily the broadest appeal in terms of the range of use cases that they can cover.
So maybe we can just jump into some of those use cases. Maybe let's talk a bit about, if we look at Viber and WhatsApp, for example, as the same kind of thing, maybe but in a different region, we could probably bring Telegram into that conversation as well. What type of use cases are you seeing in those on those channels? Dave, we'll come to you first.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite a mix. I mean, I think if you look at WhatsApp, where they're really kind of really doubled down in a lot of what they're doing in LATAM and India. Culturally, there's a real fit there because users live on their mobile devices. They live in WhatsApp very much, and there's an acceptance and almost an encouragement to live their kind of their whether it be their personal, their P2P interactions or their business interactions within the mobile space. So actually, there you'd be hard pushed to pull down 2 or 3 specific use cases that really nail things down because with flows that is a really rich capability that WhatsApp have rolled out, plus integrated payments in India and Brazil. Actually, you can pull out any number of a gamut of use cases that can be delivered or the brand may want to meet, which can meet the purposes in those regions. More broadly, obviously customer support is in that user-initiated interactions. Click to WhatsApp has been a significant driver and was really an early driver for WhatsApp. And then in certain markets where they're seeing they're able to kind of bottom out the pricing, really driving and kind of focusing on the authentication use case. Viber are maybe being less kind of disparate with their approach. They're very much focusing on kind of the chat elements and the more engaging elements. So they're being a little bit more selective around the kind of the brands that they're sporting into business messaging and looking at more enterprise. I think WhatsApp really are. They ease the routine, and maybe that's a question we'll maybe come to later in terms of maybe the threats that kind of ease into WhatsApp as a business account is relatively straightforward. Viber are less so I think that's something where they're looking much more at the enterprise side and really kind of very much focusing around a lot more promotional messaging.
Okay. So just in terms of, we kind of touched on it there a bit, Bradley. The kind of what's the biggest threats would you say that the OTT apps provide to, or in rival with SMS and RBM? Where is it that they might win, and why?
So I think the threat that OTT poses to SMS is well understood by this point, right? I mean, it's a rich channel, it's a conversational channel, it's seen as significantly more secure, and I think probably this is something we don't talk about enough, or perhaps are slightly unwilling to face in the, what did Tim call it earlier, the carrier ecosystem. I like that, I'm going to steal it. We probably need to face up to that a little bit more, is that SMS is broadly seen as a security risk. So working with, like I said, our large banking customers, that's something I've been quite surprised about, is the strength of the distrust in the security that SMS offers. They have told me straight to my face that the only reason they still use SMS OTP is because they've yet to be presented with a credible alternative, by which they mean something with the same reach and something with the same affordability. So I think OTT presents an obvious threat there. I'm actually going to be slightly controversial and disagree with the premise of the question here, because I don't think that OTT poses a threat to RCS. I think it's the other way around. Because if you go back before Apple announced support for RCS, from the perspective of an enterprise customer, RCS and OTT channels were really broadly the same. The functionality and the features that they offer were the same. Relative to RCS, they have a SMS, they have a relatively limited reach. And really, again, we come back to our little carrier ecosystem echo chamber. We all understand the differences and the technical differences, and we think they're very important. Enterprise customers don't care. They want to know who they can contact, what they can send, and how much it's going to cost them, basically. If you're lucky, they talk about ROI as well. So we've gone from a situation where, from their perspective, they are all broadly the same. Now, RCS has a key advantage which OTT just can't match, which is its reach. Because now Apple have announced support, coupled with the fact it is native to the handset, it's a matter of time before RCS has the same global reach that SMS does. That is a key advantage which OTT can't match, and on pretty much every other level, from the perspective of an enterprise customer, they're equivalent.
Yeah, I think DCB mentioned this at Vonage. He's kind of selling solutions and he sells messaging, and I'm guessing that's the same for Infobip, Sinch, and other partners in that system where you're selling multiple channels, right? You're selling a solution, not a technology. In effect, is that exactly how you kind of see that as well, or do you get customers saying, I want to send something on WhatsApp because I use it more day to day, and then I might use text messaging there?
Sometimes. So I think realistically, we're all going to be unified in the idea that we are customer-led and we're going to give them what they need to meet whatever strategic goal they're trying to accomplish, right? We're never going to go into a customer and mandate a particular channel for any reason. So usually we're taking an advisory role. We're trying to understand what they're trying to do, and then we will advise on what we think is the best way to do that. Yes, very rarely we'll see a customer say, hey, I use WhatsApp every day, so I want to reach customers on WhatsApp. But realistically, that happens, I would say, relatively rarely. Usually it's us providing the advice.
And I'm guessing that much is the same here. It will depend in the regions and the clients.
Exactly, yeah.
And just to build on that as well, I think it's because it's not just, we'll be in a similar position. It's not just about providing the solutions for our clients. It's also about allowing or enabling our partners and our clients to provide those solutions to their clients. There's a real kind of upstream value chain that we need to make sure we're providing the right solutions for, or the capability for them to provide the right solutions.
So if we look at kind of problems, opportunities for a second, where would you say, Dave, some of the issues are at the moment on the OTT side, if you're comparing it with RCS maybe?
I think issues-wise, we've already talked about kind of the reach. There's a really good point there. I think there was a real kind of analogous nature between RCS and the OTTs in terms of the reach, because there's always that question. So you end up having in which market, which channel has the bigger reach, and that's going to be a moot question. As RCS scales through different carriers and different markets. So the challenges then really come into, well, what are the capabilities? And actually, it's almost like the two sides of the coin, right? One of the things that benefits of an OTT channel has is they own, effectively the ecosystem is them, they own that. So they have greater kind of flexibility. They can roll out new changes more quickly. Potentially quite rich capabilities, as we see across some of those channels have some really interesting and rich capabilities. But with that becomes uncertainty. For example, we've seen some of the challenges that businesses have been hit with by Meta announcing pricing changes, or Meta being quite bullish in a certain market and getting hit by the regulator, and that affecting their availability. We see what Meta are doing in terms of some of their kind of marketing messaging, and that presents for some businesses that presents a real opportunity and really aligns to what they want to be doing. For other businesses, that represents uncertainty and a lack of stability, which of course within the telco ecosystem you do have. There isn't a single player. You have the telcos, you have all of the members of the GSMA, including Google and Apple and the like, that are really driving the standards forwards. So it's kind of, what's good for one may not be good for the other. Yeah.
So I think you've kind of answered the question I'm going to ask next, but I'll come to Bradley.
Well, that's good.
Do you think they will both coexist, or will one beat the other, if that's the right simple way of putting it? Will one kind of advance ahead of the other and knock that one out of the market, and maybe one will focus on a certain type of message and another? How do you see that playing out?
It's hard to predict, right? But I think ultimately within the A to P space, there is going to be one overall winner, because I think there kind of has to be. And I think what we're probably going to see is, and this is a personal opinion, we're probably going to see large multinational companies leaning towards RCS because it's simpler, because OTT it's very regional, right? So, UK and Western Europe, we're WhatsApp users. You go over to Southeast Asia, they're line users or they're KakaoTalk users or whatever. So if you are trying to contact your customers in multiple countries, it's far simpler and easier to just have RCS. And it's also, in a way, more reliable, because WhatsApp, obviously, your customer has to have the app. And actually, there's a great deal of variation among age ranges as to whether they're going to have that app or not, in addition to the geographical differences which I just spoke about. So RCS is going to be more reliable, and it's just going to be simpler if you're doing business across multiple countries. I still think that OTT channels are probably going to have value if you are a regional business, or if you tend to do business among younger age ranges, or if you want to present yourself as being a bit kind of hip and forward thinking. I think WhatsApp probably does that to a greater extent than RCS will.
What about the argument? So Meta have pitched to me before that they are more a conversational channel and we leave the marketing stuff to RCS because that's what that's more aligned to do. Would you agree with that, Dave, or is that not what you see?
I would question that, given the changes to their kind of promotional messaging, how they're kind of very much looking to take a kind of a more advertising-based approach into the platform. So I wouldn't wholly disagree, but I'm not sure I would wholly agree. I think it's a really interesting kind of point Bradley raised there in terms of kind of the users of the different ecosystems. If you look at a number of the OTTs, messaging is part of what they do. There's much more of a likelihood for the power apps, the mega apps that are used, particularly in Southeast Asia and the like, where messaging is part of that. And if you look at where users are now, I'm old enough to have adult children, believe it or not, they rarely use WhatsApp. They peer-to-peer messaging is via TikTok or Snap.
Yeah.
So actually, they're not available via WhatsApp. And that's in a market where it's pretty prevalent in the UK. So I think there's going to be WhatsApp particularly, and will have a challenge how they maintain kind of their broad reach and the volume of their addressable users right now. So I think they probably will be. They're very much rolling into the wider Meta family. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out over the next couple of years as they start to see what their users are doing. So I'm not sure I'd wholly agree. I think there's probably an element of truth in what they're saying, but I think they've probably got. I'll be surprised if there isn't a kind of a multi-pronged strategy.
Yeah, I think what's interesting there as well, you say kind of the younger demographic are doing messaging through the social media now, and even my kids who are into gaming, they're on Twitch and they're messaging, and they're getting bombarded with business messaging, which I try my hardest to switch everything off so I don't run up a big credit card bill. And that is something that we're looking at as well. So we've kind of, as MEF to date, we've kind of focused on SMS, RCS and WhatsApp. But now I think what we look to do, TikTok are one of our members as well. We're going to look to kind of investigate those social channels a bit more as well. Because I think the business messaging is certainly going to be creeping into that. Yeah,
absolutely. You're going to keep seeing almost that kind of that cascade as an OTT channel, as a social media app, has a significant user base, a significant cohort of users that probably have the similar demographics, similar age. They start to look at how they can, one, retain those users, but also then two, look to monetize those. But it's interesting, I think that kind of example is quite a good one, because it's not necessarily supporting kind of A to P, business messaging, promotional messaging in that sense. What you find is there's probably much more kind of niche brands that are very specific and already active in the channel, already active in Twitch, already active in TikTok, that are then using that channel to then engage with the users that are in there.
Final question I've got. What's your experience with the market in terms of business messaging coming into a personal messaging channel? Because I've got my own views on that, and I've not been at the coalface, if you like, with the clients for a while dealing with this. So I just wondered, what's the latest on that when it comes to client level?
From a customer's perspective, there's certainly some nervousness around it. When I talk to large enterprise customers, it's almost the first question they ask is, well, hang on a minute, are my customers going to like that? And it's difficult because we have, frankly, not a lot of data on it. We do have some going back a few years where customers are saying, well, we want businesses to be talking to us on the channels that we use. Realistically, that's an OTT channel. Let's be honest. We don't text message our friends or our family anymore. We WhatsApp them. So if they're saying, I want you on the channel I'm on, that means WhatsApp. And that's always the advice that I give when I'm asked that question. But I strongly suspect, and this is gut feeling because I haven't seen data on it, I strongly suspect that attitude is going to vary pretty enormously between generations.
Yeah.
I suspect that older people are going to see it mostly as a social channel and they're not going to want businesses on it, and younger people are going to take the opposite view.
We did have that. We had an event back in November, I think it was, maybe October, and we had some, I call them younger people on the stage, and they said exactly that. I asked that question, how do you feel about getting messages from a company on the channel that you're in? And the answers unanimously were, I don't mind as long as it's relevant and it's good for me. So maybe a voucher, saving money, and it's something I'm interested in. So.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of, as I touched on a little bit earlier, it's not. I think you're absolutely right. There's going to be a real generational point, but I think there's also a cultural point as well. As you say, in certain markets, particularly those where there's maybe less kind of fixed line, they're used to using their phones all the time. They're used to using whether it be WhatsApp or other channels for living their lives. So actually, their personal and their business communications are already intertwined. But it's a really interesting point. I think as it's interesting to see how that's going to evolve as RCS grows and more brands. The really great examples that Christian showed earlier. As that grows, as more brands are potentially in the user's messaging inbox, what's the reaction to that? Are they happy with that, or does that get in the way of their personal messaging if they're using it for personal messaging, for example? So I think that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And Google did look at having a tabbed inbox historically, so that maybe is something that will come back in the future at some point. But I think the old adage, I remember seeing it earlier this week, was you want to be where your consumers are.
Yeah.
I think I'd probably kind of slightly caveat that. You want to be where your consumers want you to be.
Yeah.
And that might be where they are all the time, but it might also be where they are infrequently, but where they want to be able to talk to you.
Maybe they don't know as well at some point. Because again, from my personal experience, sometimes I receive a business message on a channel I do not want, and it actually sends a bit of an emotional signal to my brain that says this is annoying. Whereas if it's the right information I'm getting at the right time and something that does actually offer value, I'm kind of comfortable.
Yeah, I'll personally, again, this is just me personally, I'll compartmentalise. So if I don't want to see, I'll not consent. If I'm kind of want to see the brand but not regularly, I'll give them my email. I think it was mentioned earlier. Email's there. It's a shed. You put things where you don't want to not have, but you don't want to see every day. So there's emails there. You'll pop in and see. But if there's a brand I want to know when they communicate to me, then that becomes a mobile opt-in.
Great.
I think it's worth pointing out as well, if you look historically, as brands have moved on to particular channels, customers have actually ended up moving off them. If you look at email, when we get more and more companies emailing you, the value of those emails has gone down, the read rate's gone down, the click-through rate's gone down because people are too quick to go, and then they've actually moved on to a different channel. And the same thing has happened to a certain extent with SMS. We've then moved on to channels like WhatsApp. We do our social messaging there, and we keep SMS really for transactional messages from customers. So if businesses are too quick and they are too prolific on that channel, they actually devalue that channel.
Right. Okay, so we're kind of running a bit short on time. Is there any questions from the floor? I think Susan's gone somewhere, so you may have to shout if there is anything.
Just throw the mic.
Yeah, throw the mic. Okay, well, yes. I think if you can speak up, that would be fantastic. Or I can
Oh, no, sorry.
I can relay if they can't hear. Thank you, Susan.
Yeah.
I do actually have one behind me.
Emanuele Vadilonga with Bandwidth. I'm a regulatory counsel. I'm interested in hearing what you're saying about the difference in between the OTT and obviously the rich messaging, which is generally ability to reach, everyone, everywhere, in any case. And so the question is, do you see that there may be an incentive at some point for the OTTs to interconnect and allow interoperability in between them, or do you think they'll just avoid that and accept that they have the gap?
I think realistically, the only interconnect would ever happen through acquisition.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it's a really interesting question, and to be honest, one that I haven't previously considered. I think David's probably right, and I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier, where for most of them, messaging actually isn't their core business. So I think there's less of an incentive. I also think as well it's worth, we kind of touched on it earlier, OTT channels and social media channels are subject to trends in a way that really the rest of the mobile messaging ecosystem isn't. So I question whether specific OTT channels have the longevity to kind of put plans like that into place. just me speculating, but you know, they're subject to trends, so there is a possibility that all of WhatsApp's users end up on something else tomorrow, like TikTok, for example. And if that is the case, they're not going to be around long enough to put plans like that in place and into action.
Great. One more quick question we have time for. Okay, well, I think we'll probably close it there. Thank you very much, both of you, Bradley and David. It's great. Thank you. Cheers.